Hello, everybody. Good to be with you. So today we're going to talk about living realization within relativity. And we want to talk about this because a whole lot of you have already had a realization, the realization. But many of you just don't know it yet, right? Actually, and notice that I'm saying realization. I'm not saying awakening. I'm not saying and talking about enlightenment, anything like that. I'm talking about realization, because although it is equated with enlightenment and awakening and all that, to those things make it sound like something new has to happen, right? Like, I got to wake up, and I don't know how to do that, but I've got to do that. I've got to wake up. And realization, while meaning essentially the same thing, realization doesn't mean that anything has to be gained or that anything has to be thrown away. It just means that we need to recognize what's here right now. And this divine recognition, that's realization. So the problem is when we realize, a lot of times we don't know it. We will just go, oh man, that was cool. That really, it must be very close to it. But I know it can't be it, because it can't be that simple. Or I'm undeserving. Or I'm not clear enough. I'm not clean enough. I'm not, I still eat meat. I still smoke cigarettes. I still do whatever. Therefore, that precludes me from awakening. Well, in the classical sense, that the way it's taught in Vedanta period, the way it's taught in Vedanta or whatever, that might preclude you. Who knows? I mean, there's a in most of the Indian and they don't call it that, but a little bit in Zen as well, and all of the others, really, there is a process, and this process is that's your big challenge, is what do I need to do in order to achieve enlightenment, in order to come to awakening. And those are all events. Realization will be remembered as an event, but it's not really an event because nothing happens. When I say nothing happens, I mean nothing happens in the world. What happens is that what you really are, simply come to recognize what you really are. Nothing has to happen, nothing new. There's a change in perspective. And that little change in perspective is the movement from the ordinary world to the extraordinary ordinary world. Okay. And because with realization, we will, and this may be passing, it may come and go, it may show up any kinds of ways, but the bottom line on realization is that there's a change in perspective where we come to see things as awakeness itself, as from the divine perspective. How about that? So we come to see things from the divine perspective. And it's not like Fred comes to see things from the divine perspective. From the divine perspective, there's no Fred. Now, we don't want to break this to Betsy because she'll think, yeah, sure, there's a Fred. I mean, she knows all this stuff, but I'm just teasing. Is that Betsy knows a Fred. I know a Betsy. But there's no one here, and there's no Betsy either. There's a Betsy unit, there's a Fred unit. But there are these patterns that are repetitious and easily identifiable, and we call those patterns Fred and Betsy. But they are patterns. That is, this is a lump of conditioning. And we always talk about, God, I just got to get rid of my conditioning. Well, the body is conditioning, so be careful about what you wish for. So we don't want to be rid of our conditioning. We can't be rid of our conditioning. The conditioning never wakes up. It can be modified, but it's just not going to completely disappear, and because the unit will have to disappear in order for that to happen. And although that we're not saying that that doesn't happen at some point, I don't think many of us are lining up to have that happen this afternoon. I'm not scared of death, but I'm not out there rooting for it either to come on and get me. I'll be okay if it does, but you know, I've got a pretty good gig going on here. Why would I want to blow it? Got a great wife, got a great teaching, got great friends, and great dogs, great little, you know, tiny little life. Mostly lived within the walls of this little house. Not even a big house, small house. Small house, big yard. I like that. So what we have to come to do is that awakeness itself has to come to see, oh my God, I'm awakeness. I've been chasing awakeness. I've been looking for awakeness, and here it is that I am it. Oh my goodness, what am I going to do about that? So the realization that you are it, that is a non-dual realization. It is an absolute recognition of the absolute. But that doesn't have much to do with relativity, because what I truly am is the unborn. I don't have anything to do with any of this. But I noticed that there's still a Fred life here. There's still a Fred experience, even though there's no Fred. But there's still a compelling story here. And I'm not trying to get over that or dismiss that experience or downplay that experience or get around that experience. What I'm trying to do is accept that experience regardless of what it looks like. And not only accept it, but really bow to it. You know, some people say embrace it. Well, that's fine if you could pull that off. I notice that there's just certain arisings that I can't embrace, but I can bow to them. I can recognize, okay, it's what is. This is what is. And there's only what is. So we have to come to live in what is, and we'll stop living in what isn't, which is what we're thinking about what is. I'm sorry about the wordplay, but it's just the easiest way. I had an interview today, an hour-long session with a guy who woke up in satsang last Sunday, and he woke up very clearly. And we had a wonderful conversation, but mostly what we did was laugh, because I just sat over here with wordplay, and he went into stitches, and so did I, because what we're talking about is the funniest thing in the world. This is the cosmic joke. What we're talking about right now is the cosmic joke. It is the only thing worth being serious about, but we don't want to take it too seriously, because if we do, we'll end up taking these things too seriously. We'll be taking these units and thinking that these units are the end all be all, and they're not. They're just hosts. They're temporary hosts for divinity, if you will. Right. And it's not saying Fred's not divine. There's no Fred. Fred's not evil either. There's no Fred. So what there is there's a repetitive pattern that it's reasonably predictable. Yeah. If you give it money, it'll say thank you. If you're Betsy and you give it a kiss, it'll say thank you, or it'll feel thank you, or it'll say I love you, whatever. It's all very predictable. But not everything is predictable. Nonetheless, how to live realization within relativity. So I want you to understand the difference between seeing things from an absolute view and seeing things from the relative view, because most of the trouble in non-duality is confusing these two views. Because there's no one here and nothing to do and no one here. That's absolutely true. I promise you, it's absolutely true. However, it is not relatively true. Because from the relative perspective, there's a Fred with a Fred life and a Fred wife and a Fred teaching and all of this. So what am I supposed to do? As awakeness, finding myself living within relativity. See, people will wake up with me and then they'll come right back and they say, so, well, wow, that's unbelievable. What do I do now? And my question to them, which is true from a non-dual perspective, is who wants to know? Because they will have moved back into character. They'll have moved out of the enlightenment that, or the realization that they've had, and they'll move back into believing that they are just one little thing instead of a whole damn thing, right? So another way to answer this when they ask me, so what do I do now, is I'll ask them, well, what have you done up to now? And they say, well, I mean, I just live my life, right? I just, well, what about decisions? Well, I just make decisions. I mean, they happen. I guess I make them. And it's not true that we make them, but it feels like we make them. It looks like we make them. Within relativity, let's just say we make them. Within relativity, there may be no cause and effect, and there's not, because there's just one thing going on. So there's no actually cause and effect, but within relativity, there is. Listen to this. I drop that pen, there's a noise. This is cause, that's effect, right? And now it's gone on the floor all on its own. So, so what we can do is the easiest way to live in relativity, in post-awakening from realization, is to live your life. Live your life with the knowing that of who and what you are. Recognize, for instance, I know right now that whatever I am, I'm not sure what that is, but I know what it isn't, and it isn't this. Okay, it's just not this. It's the animating presence which allows for this to talk and move its arms and do other crazy and embarrassing stuff. So, but it is that which allows this to happen. It is that which, because in the absence of a sense of being, nothing can happen. When I'm sitting around with Betsy and we notice that we're out of bread, we don't look at each other and go, my God, we're out of bread. There's no one here to go to the store. One of us, typically Betsy, will get in the car and go to the grocery store and get some bread. And when we get to the counter and they say, that'll be $2.97, we don't say that doesn't calculate, doesn't mean anything at all. That you're just rattling numbers. You're not even doing it because there's no you there, Miss Cashier. No, you just do what is called for, which is you reach in your wallet, you get $3, you give it to them, they give you change, and you leave with your bread. So don't make too much out of relativity. Don't try to outthink awakening. Don't really, I'm just telling you don't, and I'm just telling you, you can't do anything other than what you do. But I'm hoping that this insight might encourage you to move in a more straightforward fashion than you might otherwise if you had to discover everything on your own, like I did. Because I was dumb as a post and went up every blind alley for several years in post-awakening, folks, in post-awakening. I had to reinvent the whole world as a post-awakening being. I had to discover how things worked from a post-awakened, what we would call an awakened being, okay? So-called awakened being, because there's not anything that's awake, and there's no damn being either. But we will just pretend for the moment. We'll go along with the play and say, and that would be an awakened being. So what we do is you do whatever comes next. Like when I decide, well, it feels like that there's someone here, and it feels like that I decide that I want to go to a movie then what I do is I get dressed appropriately. I grab my wallet, I get my keys, and I drive to the movies. And I ain't going to the movies without Betsy. So you can just assume that Betsy's going to be there. And we drive to the movies. And there's not like, to enlightened people go to the movies? I don't know. I just don't know. Should we go? I don't know. I don't know if we can, because I don't know if enlightened beings do that, right? I once, well, I don't even think I want to go there. I once heard of someone ask a very embarrassing sexual question regarding enlightened beings, and he said, "Yeah, I guess they can." So the thing to understand is that the knowledge that you are awakeness isn't necessarily going to affect this on your command. There's no one there, but you will think there's someone there until you know differently, and you will believe you have self-control until you discover that you do not. The reason you can be sure you don't have self-control is that you can be sure that there's no you to have it or not have it. Just this, and it's happening the way that it is. It's all happening. So I remember years ago in a live session, I did a group awakening session in Asheville, North Carolina years ago. And one of that was pretty successful. And one of the women who had just woken up, however, came to me afterwards, and she said, "So Fred, I've just graduated from college. What do I do with my life now?" Right? Well, she had already the ego was already taking over the awakening, and you would not ask that as a freshly awakened being. You would not consciously, as a consciously awakened being, you would not ask that, whether it was freshly or now after 15 years. It wouldn't be asked. But there was a relative young woman in front of me within relativity, and there was an old guy over here that could perhaps offer her something, but I'm terrified of giving advice. And one of the reasons I'm terrified of giving advice is that I gave this thing advice for decades, and it wound up as a bomb in the park. So maybe advice is not what we really want to come to this thing with, although now there will be some little twist, if that comes, to where the wisdom can be found, even though it can't be found from Fred. Because we know that can't be found from Fred because there is no Fred. So what I told her was, well, what I would do is I would be willing, I would watch which way the wind is blowing, and then I'd be willing to move in that direction. Perfect advice. I swear to God, it's perfect advice. It's perfect advice, because that's how, whether she continued to think of herself as a Judy or she came to know on a more permanent basis that she was awakeness. It's great advice either way. It really is. So, because you don't have any free will, you just think you do. You don't have any free will because there's no you over there. I'm over there. That's who I'm working with. I'm working with me. I only have one client, and it's always me. I only have one client. It's always me. So you over there, you're thinking you're you, but hell, I know you're me. And what I mean by that, when I say I know you're me, I don't mean Fredness. I don't mean Fred. What do I mean? I mean awakeness. Because there's nothing but awakeness, and that's known over here very clearly. It's not known over there so clearly. So, but there has been there has been an absolute seeing. You can see that relativity is it counts a lot, but you can see that it doesn't matter. Now, you will not understand this until you wake up, but you will understand it after that. So, or can be helped to understand it either way, however it comes, but you will probably see it automatically. One of the few realizations that you will have just automatically after awakening. So if you act as if there has not been an awakening when you know in your heart that there has been. But the problem is that in early post-awakening, you may not be able to know who it was that woke up, because there may be a strong egoic claim, as there was here, that Fred woke up, right? And Fred was, it was a nice additional thing to add to Fred. And the problem with that is it didn't last long, because the awakening quickly faded the moment it was claimed by a Fred. And yours will be too, if that happens. I deal with people all the time. Dealt with a guy this week. He had an awakening 20 years ago. Actually, this week, last week, I think. And he had an awakening. Well, I probably dealt with somebody like that this week too. But at any rate, I'm just thinking about one particular guy that had a very, very clear awakening 20 years ago. I mean, so there was still a lot of what I call wakefulness, or in other words, sort of a potential. There was still a lot of wakefulness there, but there just wasn't any clarity. See, once he, and I was able to help him see and pull out that clarity, at which point the awakening is seen for what it is, and the next thing you know, you got yourself a living, breathing, awakened being. But I have not hit him with a magic wand. The water didn't turn to wine. The storm didn't pass or move in. The walls didn't shake. There was no lightning, no angels. There was no fireworks, no choir. It just moved from being unconscious awakeness to being conscious awakeness. And that little shift from being unconscious awakeness to being conscious awakeness, that's what we call realization. It's what we also refer to it wrongly as awakening. But the problem is, when we hear that as seekers, we will think that this thing woke up, and my God, that body over there woke up. John woke up, and I'm jealous as hell. And that's the way I felt. And I was just, man, why not me? Why not me? Said Fred. But I didn't know that John had not woken up. I did not know that there was not a John. I did know that there was a body over there, and that was clear to me, and I just projected the rest. But the rest was not true. Awakeness itself, conscious awakeness, or awakeness came to know itself as conscious awakeness through that body over there. See, so the body's plans don't matter, right? I mean, I work with, but nobody really plans on awakening when they do. It just happens, right? I mean, you may plan on awakening in the sense that I'm going to do all these practices, and one day I hope to God I wake up. And you can hope for it, you can pray for it, you can work for it, but you can't predict it. You can't even know if it's going to, you can't predict, you can't even know if it's going to happen, because it happens to whom it happens to. And what it amounts to is that all we're talking about is realization. We're talking about that conscious awakeness through some units comes to recognize, well, golly, I'm conscious awakeness. I've been looking for conscious awakeness. This is insane. I'm a dog chasing its tail. I will quit this. But that quitting may take a while, because there's conditioning that has not woken up, will not wake up, and has not even been but barely influenced by awakeness coming to recognize itself. That's a whole different world, because that's the unborn. This is the born world. This is the born world. This is where relativity is the born world. And where you live, you think you live in relativity, but you don't. You think you live in that body, and you both do and don't. But where you really live is beyond. You live beyond relativity. We could say you live prior, but you also live after. But there's no before and there's no after, so you can only live as awakeness right now. And it's a matter of whether you have this recognition right now as to what you are. I know right now, with all this distraction and cutting a video and all this and that and the other, I know that I am awakeness. What is it that knows that? Awakeness knows it's awakeness. Does Fred know it's awakeness? There's no Fred. There may be Fred behavior. There may be Fred suffering. There may be Fred problems. None of it affects me. None of it. None of it. None of it. So if you want to know how to live realization within relativity, it's just act as if realization never happened, while knowing perhaps on a constant or an intermittent basis, or maybe never again, who knows, but recognizing that there is something beyond this world and that you are that. There's something beyond this world and you are that. You are the unborn. You have nothing to do with the born world. You don't control this. You don't, people say, well, I guess I made this big mess or whatever. Nope, 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 you didn't. This is just happening and there's no doer. See, there's no doer, whether you're a God or a little man, there's still no doer. This is just happening. So just recognize that whether you know it or not, whether you want to be or not, you are conscious awakeness and you're speaking with yourself right now. And we can be quite sure of that because there's nothing other than you. Ideas that there's anything other than you are insane. And this process of realization is actually simply going sane. And some of it is quick and some of it is slow. It happens as it happens, and it always happens the right way. When you hear someone else's awakening and your awakening is not like theirs and you begin to question yours, don't. Because they're over there thinking that you had the authentic awakening and they're questioning theirs. That's just the way it works. But when I had a big glimpse in 1992 and then didn't have another one 14 years, I couldn't get it out of my head. I knew something had happened and I kept telling myself, I kept trying to back away from that. I kept trying to make that unhappen. I kept trying to deny that it occurred. At first I wanted to claim it, and that's what made the awakening go away, because Fred claimed it and there's no Fred. Awakeness experienced a Fred-free moment. And in that Fred-free moment, awakeness realized the truth, which was it realized itself. And when it did, it recognized that there's not anything else. I hope this was helpful. If it's not my fault because I don't do it. If it was helpful, I'll take the credit, but I'm not taking any blame. No, I can't take any credit or any blame because I don't do this. But it sort of feels like Fred does this. It feels like I made a decision to sit down and start this video before Betsy got back home. That's what it feels like. I don't believe that, but there is that story. And why should I fight that story? Why do I have to non-dual everything? Do I really need to? Can I not just say, so, honey, I cut a video while you were gone? Do I need to say, honey, a video was cut while you were gone? Oh my God, you can't believe it. God cut a video in our study. That's true. But we don't need to belabor it. Yeah. We don't need to belabor it. Thanks for joining me here today. I love you to death. I'll see you soon. Come see me in satsang. And don't forget about Willie's GoFundMe. There will be a link in this description for that GoFundMe. He's got cancer and he's getting better. But we got to keep it. We got to keep up with the chemo and all that. So please help us, help Willie. Thanks. Even if you don't, I still love you. You can't make me unlove you. and you can't get anything wrong. So don't worry about questioning that. It's not possible for you to get anything wrong. That body will do what it's programmed to do, and you can't stop it. Goodbye for now. Up to you.